Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 112, which is recorded on September 16th, 2022. On today's episode in the Culture Corner, we're talking about DeSantis busing illegal immigrants up to Martha's Vineyard.
Not nuts.
And both the establishment opinion molders as well as libertarians showing their righteous outrage over said policy. In the Epstein did not kill himself segment, we are talking tax agents evading taxes. That's right. The U.S. Department of the Treasury, which is supposed to oversee the IRS, is actually auditing the tax, 1,250 tax agents for not paying their taxes. And in the main part of the episode, we're talking Alex Stein versus Dan Crenshaw, or more abstractly speaking, attacking the right from the right and the left from the left. And all of that and more on episode 112 on the other side of the jump in.
Dane, I gotta commend you on that nice and sterile intro. No mess there whatsoever. No pink eye to be found anywhere in there.
Not a hair out of place.
No mentions of buttholes or nothing.
So episode 112 can be found at wndpodcast.com/112. You can find it on any podcast catcher. You can find the videos on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. And then you can link up with us on our other socials on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search for Weapons and Meme Destruction, find our little logo that you know and love, and jump in the comment sections, like, subscribe, share, join the sane space any way you can. Get the word out to friends and family, help grow the show. Thank you for your service. So with that being said, we're jumping right into the Culture Corner, where we are talking about outrage from the regime's mouthpieces and, people that aren't in the regime's ranks of mouthpieces, but so desperately crave their respect and attention. And you're probably noticing a theme across the last few episodes in terms of 110, 111, and 112 now. We are attacking blue-pilled libertarians in addition to others. But this idea of pre-approved opinions being regurgitated endlessly on the topic of the day. And today's topic in the Culture Corner is DeSantis busing or flying. I forget which one it was, but we will have an article in the show notes page in the comments below on the video or at wndpodcast.com/112. DeSantis busing or flying immigrants to Martha's Vineyard.
What's to be not liked about that? These immigrants have had a hard road sneaking into our country illegally. They should get a well-deserved vacation, Dane. They should get to see the best parts of the world before they get shoved way down into the shittiest parts of our country, should they not?
Exactly. And I mean, it's not like they were shipped to, San Francisco or LA, where, blue policies have turned those places into, not to steal a phrase from Trump, but shitholes. They sent them to Martha's Vineyard. I mean, I think President Obama has a house in Martha's Vineyard.
So he must have loved to see all these immigrants show up on his doorstep because he's such an advocate for all these free movement of human beings.
Exactly. DeSantis was just trying to help these individuals on their first time on U.S. soil meet the probable best president in all of American history. Is that so anti-humanitarian?
What's to go wrong? Like, what could go wrong? Like, why would they ever say anything like, ooh, their pants are dirty. Ooh, they've got fucking unwashed masses outside of our wonderful steakhouse. Like, why would they ever say that? Because they're such big proponents of, like, open the borders, let them all in.
Of course. And I forget where Martha's Vineyard is. I don't know if it's like Massachusetts or Connecticut.
It's up in the northern places with the Lyme disease. I don't know.
But suffice to say that wherever we missed on the details of the actual state that it's in, you can suffice to say it's a pretty blue area. So, as David was alluding to, the wide open borders and just let everybody who's anybody come in, no matter what the laws of the United States are, those people that live in Martha's Vineyard should be welcoming this group of people with open arms.
Well,
and they should be happy for the opportunity to show the humanitarianism that just flows from leftists and their politicians that they vote for.
Well, isn't it funny that when they're excuse me, I almost said the quiet part out loud. When they're fighting for the rights of all these immigrants to move to whatever state that they want, to do whatever they want, to get in here however they want, to get away from a shitty situation in their own country, they're, heralded as, freedom fighters. They spread democracy as far and as wide as possible, as long as you vote for me and don't show up on my lawn, apparently, because, again, I think the Texas governor did the same thing, only with buses and sent them to D.C., and everyone was outraged that he did that. It's like, well, again, you're missing the point, because, yes, he used them as political pawns to make a statement with sending them on buses, kind of like, and let's be honest, DeSantis used these people as political pawns to make a statement. But at the same time, don't forget that the other side was using them as political pawns in the same breath that they're gasping when they show up on their doorstep. Like, if you truly were for the freedom of movement for all humans into this wonderful freedom state of America, or freedom country of America, then you should have welcomed them with open arms into Martha's Vineyard and Washington, D.C. If you really backed up what you were preaching, you wouldn't have a problem. This wouldn't be a discussion. They'd have been like, oh, thanks, DeSantis. We could totally use these guys here, and they're totally going to love their life here, because that's what that's, again, almost said the silent part out loud. That's what we're preaching on Capitol Hill. But it's really easy to say words. It's really hard to back them up with action. And what we're seeing here is that clearly they weren't fully behind all the words that they were saying, were they, Dane?
No, and this is more of a macrocosm than the microcosm of what is called NIMBYism, which is an acronym for not in my backyard. Right. So leftist policies often, and again, NIMBYism isn't just a leftist thing. It can happen across the political spectrum, but it's that general feeling of people to say, yeah, I support X, Y, or Z, but just don't put X, Y, or Z right next to me. Right. And this takes place a lot in housing policy. So they'll say, especially leftist politicians will be all about government-funded housing and all of that kind of stuff. The colloquial term for this is the projects, but they don't want any project developments out in their suburbs right next to them. They want them shoved away in some corner that they don't have to look at it. So this wailing and gnashing of teeth about saying, using these individuals as political pawns and how dare they and all this kind of stuff. Yes, we can be standing in the middle and objectively say that absolutely, as David said, DeSantis used these individuals, and we are not going to allow, even though we started this segment, kind of pointing out the hypocrisies of both the political left and right in the United States, we're not going to allow that discussion to overshadow the fact that these individuals, the immigrants themselves, are desperate people. I think I read somewhere that they were from Venezuela, and we all know the political turmoil that's going on down there. So we can send our hearts out and have the utmost sympathy for people fleeing terrible despotic regimes like that, looking for a better life in America, and that we want them to come to America and make that better life. And that it does make sense to reform the immigration policies in the United States to make it easier for people like that to happen. But if you are going to be allegedly a nation of laws, not of men, you can't just be kind of arbitrarily deciding when the laws apply and when they don't. And make no mistake about it, that although DeSantis using this as a political pawn is in response, it's reactionary to the fact that the left uses the concept of immigration as a political pawn themselves. They use it to either implicitly suggest or sometimes explicitly state that anybody who's not on the political left is probably a racist because they don't want just completely open borders or whatever. That is using immigrants as a political pawn. So again, if you're going to get mad at DeSantis doing it, get mad at the people that live in Martha's Vineyard, not the least of which His Royal Highness Barack Obama.
Or if you're having a political discussion with one of your family members or whoever might be of a different position with you and their position is the left, and they're saying, do you believe what DeSantis did to these poor people? It's like, you mean he sent them on vacation? He sent them to one of the nicest places in this country? That seems like he did a nice thing. He didn't send them to the coal mines of West Virginia.
Like I said, or the shit-covered streets of San Francisco.
Like, he didn't send them there. He sent them to the nice place. And what are we supposed to believe? If you think you're not being manipulated by the media, what are we supposed to believe that he did? Oh, he used these people as political pawns. Like, okay, like, if you want to use me as a political pawn, send me to a massage therapist that also gives me a full release at the end. Oh my God, I'll be your political pawn for years. Every Wednesday, 12 o'clock, on time. I'll be there.
And, you know, we're kind of getting into the purpose of why this stuck out as a potential topic for the Culture Corner, because the culture, whether in the political culture or in the broader context of labeling anybody who doesn't agree hook, line, and sinker with leftist liberal policies, is probably a racist, probably a fascist, and, you know, insert other scary buzzword here, is we have two tweets that really kind of sums up the direction that the establishment pushes these types of discussions. And then we have the second tweet is from a quote unquote libertarian, Hannah Cox, who is just regurgitating that mouthpiece under the title of libertarian, because again, like we pointed out on 110 and 111, she so desperately demands the respect of MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times because she doesn't want to be seen as one of quote unquote those libertarians. So the first tweet is from Chris.
The fuck you mean those libertarians?
It would be us. We would be persona non grata to any event that would want Hannah Cox to speak. We'll put it that way.
One more time.
That's her name, David. Shush.
Nice.
Now, the first tweet is from Chris Hayes, who I don't know if he has a show on MSNBC or if he's just a regular contributor, but he is a certified blue Twitter check. He is somebody who is allowed to form opinion. You should probably get your opinions from him. And if you disagree with him, again, insert Nazi, racist, bigot, whatever. Chris Hayes had this to say about the immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. Quote, deeply, deeply sick and dehumanizing to fling human beings somewhere vindictively. Now, listen, as you all know, I'm an attorney for a living. Words are the tools of practicing law. Words have meaning. You have to be precise with your language for very specific reasons. If you're not precise in a contract, you might get your ass handed to you in court. If you're not precise in terms of the wording of the rules and regulations of the state, say, for example, maybe you don't get to rule with as iron a fist as you want. When Chris Hayes throws out the words fling human beings and somewhere vindictively, well, vindictively by definition is you're trying to get back at somebody in particular.
So we put all these guys in like little slingshots. All the way up to Martha's Vineyard, just firing fucking immigrants into Martha's Vineyard. And they just land on top of roofs and bounce off, and they're like, "Oh, es muy bonita, sí." And then they just.
So more importantly than the fling, what you're assuming, I just said it. They're from Venezuela, David. I just said that.
Well, I'm assuming that they speak Spanish from Venezuela. Maybe they're not English-speaking Venezuelans.
Anyway, more importantly than fling is vindictively. Now, Hayes wants that to be very, well, to use his name, hazy. He wants you to think, well, did DeSantis do this to be vindictively against the immigrants themselves? See, because this is where they live. They live in the gray. when he uses words like that, he wants to suggest to you this whole like dog whistle thing, right? DeSantis did this because really he hates immigrants and because he's a racist. We've already confirmed that for you many times on MSNBC.
He's got a red check mark next to his name. He's obviously racist.
But if anything that DeSantis did, quote unquote, vindictively, it's, vindictively in the political sense against leftist liberal politicians or people like Chris Hayes that spend all of their airtime calling him a racist and all this kind of stuff. So again, that gray area, who's he being vindictive toward? Is he being it towards the immigrants themselves, which confirms Hayes' worldview that DeSantis is just this side of Hitler? Or is he being vindictive, again, according to Hayes, by showing leftists how hypocritical they are by saying, we want open borders policy because we know it's not going to affect us, back to NIMBYism. It'll affect those southern border states, but we hate them anyway because they're red states. Well, now when you have to deal with the consequences of your policies firsthand, you don't like it that much. But it's much easier to say that DeSantis is acting vindictively, subtly suggesting it's against the immigrants themselves, rather than
your policies suck.
Lay in the bed that you made.
Or to speak to my brethren, the people with problems. If you're an addict of gambling, please call 1-800. I don't know the number right now. If you have a gambling addiction, please seek help. But it sounds like he's calling their bluff. He's saying, yes, indeed, if you want to let all these people in, then absolutely. You guys can take care of them. If you are so fervently in the belief that you need to let these people in, then yes, let them into your states. Let them into your community. Support them. Be one with them. And what was their answer? Is that, oh, well, we don't like him here, so we have to blame him for being a racist and using them as pawns. But we did the same thing, but we said it first. So, again, it's disingenuous to the nth degree for this to even be a news story. Why does it matter where the immigrants go to if you want to let them all in?
And again, you should be happy that they're coming to your state because again, according to you, the red states, especially Florida, is full of fascist Nazis.
Right, of course.
Right?
So thank God they found their way to Martha's Vineyard in a safe haven with all the people that definitely have the best interests of their fellow man in mind.
Now, Hannah Cox, in either complete and utter political obtuseness and not being able to see this for what it is.
Thank God she wasn't acute.
That's true. She's a right triangle, not an acute one.
Exactly.
Anyway, and completely either disingenuously failing to see these points that we just made, or in just utter sycophantic, throw herself at the feet of her political betters in order to get their support and love and affection. She has this to say, and she's retweeting a guy named David Wade. Don't know who he is. Again, a blue check, but he's just reporting somewhat objectively, I guess it looks, that the immigrants went to Martha's Vineyard. And she had this to say. No one, quote, no one who supports this gets to call themselves pro-life. Just gross. So
what?
Hannah, either intentionally or unintentionally conflating. Now, again, I understand that when somebody says I'm pro-life, it's at all stages of life from conception till death. The broad use of that term can be used the way she used it. That's understandable. But let's not kid ourselves about the way people who speak in political terms use buzzwords and keywords and stuff like that to get you to have at least mental imageries of other things. In this case, she's at least subtly invoking abortion and saying it is completely inconsistent for you to oppose the vacuuming out of a human being from a mother's womb, and also say that, well, there's immigration laws on the books and those should be followed. She thinks that somebody can't hold those two opinions without self-contradicting themselves. And then she says, just gross. So although it's not the exact same words as Chris Hayes, the theme is still the same, right? if you don't find fault with this, or if you don't look at the nuance of why this happened, or some of the bigger picture reasons why it might have happened, well, then you can't call yourself pro-life. You're just gross. And look at me, Chris Hayes and MSNBC. I said the right thing. I regurgitated the proper opinion. Will you please accept me now? Will you please let libertarianism into your heart? Can libertarianism now take the Oval Office in the next election? I got news for you, Hannah. They're not going to respect you. They're never going to respect you because they're not making fine distinctions between fascists like Ron DeSantis and you. So this, what I think is just gross, is prostrating yourself before them at their feet and worshiping them and just regurgitating their talking points, and at least kind of subtly suggesting that you're better than those other libertarians who don't find as much fault with this as you do.
Well, I think to sum this all up is it's symptomatic of a common illness within our own society right now. It's that it's catchy taglines with no substance. They want to come out and they want to tell you what their position is in one or two sentences that appeals to your moral fiber, so you don't have to look any further into it. And then after they tell you that, they don't have to also to meet that. They also don't have to do anything more than morally posturize themselves. Like this all comes back to the fulcrum of let them all in. All the people that want to come to this country should come to this country in whatever way they can get. But they didn't add in the tagline until they end up on my lawn and I have to look at them every day and it's displeasing to my eye. So that makes me uncomfortable. Therefore, their plight is now moot to me and I need them gone. So how do I do it? Oh, I got to blame the other person that held me accountable for my words earlier.
Right. And, just to kind of plant my flag, so to speak, in terms of the whole, kind of jelly to a wall term that libertarianism is quickly becoming, because again, Hannah would self-identify as that, I think. Maybe not. Maybe she'd just call herself a classical liberal. To kind of, because it's incumbent upon those of us who use terms like libertarianism, which can be used very broadly, to stake in the ground where we stand, and so that you, the viewer, listener, somebody who's just brand new to the term, can kind of say, well, okay, maybe I agree with this, maybe I agree with that. I'm in this box, I'm not in that box, whatever. Is you might be asking yourself, well, I've always heard that libertarians were for open borders because, states are inherently illegitimate. And if states are putting up the rules to limit the free movement of human beings, then that's inherently anti-libertarian. And that is true. I have no qualms with that. And if that's exactly what Hannah had said, we would have no issues. The difference is you cannot have, and this is a simple matter of economics and what we talk about on this podcast all the time, human incentives. The incentives that you put out there is going to generate human behaviors which could have bad outcomes. If you have a massive welfare state as currently exists in the United States, you have like a moth to a flame sort of global incentive for people from all over the world to come and benefit from that system. Now, that's not to say that they shouldn't, because taxation is theft. So what supports those social welfare systems is inherently illegitimate. But in a situation when you have a country that has those types of incentives, open borders is suicide. So the same government that puts out that flame, drawing the entire world to it, if that same government also has an open borders policy, then your country does not exist.
Well, Dane, don't worry.
And again, they're saying, hey, look at that flag right next to you. You're an anarchist, are you not? Then no country should exist. That's true. But we don't live in my version of the best type of world. We don't live in a stateless society where private property owners would get to choose who's allowed on their property or not. We live in this just gross system, as Hannah would say, where the government controls all of our lives, creates public property out of massive swaths of land, like an entire border, says, hey, we're going to give you handouts from American taxpayers if you get on this side of the border, and then we're just going to make it easy for everybody to come here. That is suicide. And those two policies are incongruous. And if you make that subtle, nuanced point to say that you are libertarian by saying, I don't support the welfare state, and if it didn't exist, I might be more inclined to support open borders, but as the current situation is, you have to go through the legal system to be able to have some sort of control over the use of resources that are stolen from the American people in this country. But Hannah doesn't have time for a debate like that, because if you don't accept this, then you're probably you're definitely not pro-life, and you're probably a racist.
Well, Dane, don't worry. The IRS just hired about 2,000 new employees to track down all the multimillionaires in this country to make sure they're paying their fair share in taxes.
2,000?
Roughly.
You sure about that number?
I said roughly. Was it higher?
It's 87,000.
87. That's what I said. 10,000.
You said 2.
You misheard me. And so did everyone
10
else.
is still not that close to 87.
It's pretty close. You round up.
It's literally 8.7 times less than 87,000.
87. Fuck. 87. Jesus.
You thought I meant like,
I thought it was
like 8,700?
8,700. Yeah.
No, 87,000. 87 with 3
fuck,
zeros
I feel
behind
even
it.
more comfortable now. They're definitely going to get all those millionaires that are evading taxes. So we can totally support every person that ever wants to come over here with this welfare country that you're speaking of. And everything's going to be hunky-dory right after this, right?
Exactly. Which David is becoming very good at these segues between the segments, because that's exactly what we're talking about in the Epstein didn't kill himself segment.
You don't have to suck dick on camera. Wait until it's off. Okay?
Jesus. That escalated quickly.
Or pat me on the bum, whichever you prefer. Skip the previous 10 seconds if you didn't like the thing that I said. Go back and skip it.
News report out this week as of September 14th, 2022. The Department of the Treasury is auditing the IRS after 1,250 IRS agents failed to pay their taxes.
That's where I got the little juice about 2,000.
Yeah. No, it's only about 2,000 that didn't pay their taxes. So now I guess what? Wait, we were told these 87,000 new employees were supposed to go after tax cheats, right?
Crème de la crème. They will find these intruders in our system.
So did the IRS... Did the IRS literally hire 87,000 employees to watch 1,250 employees not steal? Or, sorry, not steal. Not pay their taxes?
Dane, you're caught in a fucking rock and a hard space right now, because at one end, I know you want to go in on these roughly 2,000 people, but at the same time, like, how awesome is that? Like, fuck the police coming straight from the underground. Like, I'm going to work for the system, and while I'm within the system, I'm going to fuck the system by not paying the system. What?
Listen.
A bunch of Zach De La Rochas working at the goddamn IRS right now.
David is 110% correct. This story gives me all type of feels.
We're all over the fucking map on this one.
Because
our spidey senses are all over the place.
Let's see, as I explain myself, let's see if it's first palatable to David.
Please.
And then let's see if it's palatable to you, the dear listener and viewer. So, David.
Sir.
Starting from fundamental premise 1, taxation is what?
Theft.
So, somebody avoiding taxes or not paying them would be a...
patriot.
Good thing. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, however... consider that the individuals, the 1,250 individuals in this case, are government employees. So they are paid with what?
Money.
Where did that money come from?
Government funding.
Which came from?
My fucking billfold.
Taxes.
Well, my theft.
So when you have these IRS agents who are not paying taxes, which is good because you're avoiding extortion and or theft, but the money that you're paid with comes from that extortion and or theft. So it's staying in your pocket.
You know what this is like? It's like sex with your fourth cousin. It's like you're so torn. Like, she's hot. She looks a little bit like me.
Oh, this is a terrifying road David's going down, but let's let him run with it.
And I'm pretty sure it's legal in most states. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. But I'm not going to let my family find out about it because they would not accept what I'm about to do.
Yikes. So, listen.
We're all fourth cousins somewhere around here, right?
There's a lot of ins, a lot of outs, a lot of what have yous going on.
Alabama, get back to me.
Going on with this story. But agreeing to perhaps disagree, or maybe you do agree with me, that IRS agents who have made a career out of running the machine that steals trillions of dollars from the American taxpayers, them avoiding taxes is not necessarily a moral good in the grand scheme of things, because at the end of the day, whether they cheat on their own taxes or not, they're still going to get up every Monday, walk into that office, and make sure that you have to pay yours. So at bare minimum, the most gracious of interpretations I can possibly give this on behalf of those 1,250 IRS employees is that they're simple, average, everyday, run-of-the-mill hypocrites. They're willing to further a system that steals from you, but they won't allow it to steal from them.
Maybe when somebody comes to your door and starts knocking on it, be like, one of them 2,000? And they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, nothing. Yeah, but if he's like, go on. So like, listen, I got $200 in my back pocket.
That says you were never here.
Maybe it finds its way into your pocket and we don't have to report either of our findings to the government.
But what's even funnier about this and why we put it in the Epstein segment is because, as you know, the purpose of the Epstein segment is to remind you
because it's so funny. Epstein.
That as well.
And the whole conundrum.
Is to remind you of historical events in light of current events, to tell you that this is why you should not only not trust the government, but also give you ammo to take to your next house party or conversation with friends when they try to say, well, the government would never do that, or they're just, benevolent public servants who, sometimes they make mistakes, but they generally have your best interests in mind. We don't even have to go back that far on this particular topic to give you a historical example. Actually, we only have to go just a few podcast episodes ago.
Let's go any further than a couple of hours or minutes.
When we talked about that initial proposal of 87,000 additional IRS agents, and we told you in that episode that there's somewhere between 700 and 900 billionaires in the United States, and although Biden and the rest of the political left would tell you these 87,000 agents are going to get, quote unquote, tax cheats of the super wealthy and nobody under $400,000 is going to see their taxes raised, I just posit to you, dear listener and viewer, as we did on that episode and as we do here again in today's Epstein segment. Do you really think those 87,000 new agents are going to go after only those 700 to 900 billionaires? Or do you really think it's going to go after them plus 1,250 tax cheat IRS agents? Or do you think that maybe all of that extra manpower is also going to come after you as well?
I don't know. Maybe just listen to the last time that they said they were going to lower your taxes and tax the rich. And then all of a sudden your taxes went up and then we never hear about the rich getting pummeled. All I'm saying is bring it back to home. What's the last time that you heard, we're going to lower taxes, we're going to make this country work with less money from the middle class and the lower class, we're going to make it work with the upper class? Well, I got news for you. Forget the upper class, middle class, lower class. The upper class is the one putting those fuckers into office. And if you think those fuckers get into office and go, you know what, I'm going to screw the person that made it possible for me to be here and making it possible for me to be here for years and years and years on top of it, I'm going to fuck them and then go into the office next week and be smiling and be like, so what's our campaign for the next term, guys? Think for a second. Think critically for 2 fucking seconds. They're never going to do that.
And David, I think our long-standing listeners and viewers know that
taxation is theft. Yes.
That obviously. when you get
cousins can be hot. It's fine.
when you get the think for a second and you're kind of lecturing, so to speak. is it's not to you, dear listener or viewer. We understand the self-selected audience that chooses to voluntarily listen to weapons of mass destruction are not the individuals we're talking to. It's sometimes your friends, sometimes your family, most of the time people you don't know that just mindlessly wander through life, imbibing all of the talking points of whatever bobblehead happens to be on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever for that day. And those are all of the opinions they have that they got from them, much like Hannah apparently got from Chris Hayes. So we know it's not you that's doing this. And so I don't want that to come across when David is telling you to think for a second. We know you're good. Just
I didn't know think for a second was an inflammatory statement.
Not that it's inflammatory, but just like there's other instances where it'll be like we blame the political strife and like people keep voting for the lesser of two evils and getting the same thing. And we understand that it's not you.
Well, just all I'm saying is like break the cycle.
It's not you or us, it's them.
Right, exactly. Like break the cycle. Like if you're listening to the person that's trying to manipulate you and you believe the person that's trying to manipulate you, then stop falling for it.
Hell, for that matter, don't even believe what we have to say. Feel free to check out the show notes page and make your own mind up about the sources that we provide.
Sure.
But in addition to that, go ahead, watch your MSNBC and your CNN, and get the same talking points from all over the place, and
we actually
make
want
up your
you
own
to.
decision. Yeah,
we actually want you to go.
But we're
go.
glad you're here for at least being one of the very few people on earth who look
if you
for
are still
a third
here,
opinion.
If you are still here, but again, take it all in. Take our bullshit that we're spewing out here. Take the bullshit that's being spewed on CNN. Take the bullshit on MSNBC and Fox. Digest it and come up with your own shit, that you feel comfortable moving forward in the world with.
Now, on the main part of today's episode, we're talking Alex Stein versus Dan Crenshaw. Now, if you don't know...
You mean the American hero / Navy SEAL Dan Crenshaw?
Yeah, Patches McCain.
So you have some feelings about Mr. Senator Representative Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Not a fan. So Alex Stein is a comedian. He's from Texas. First place I ever saw him was doing satire bits in front of like city councils during COVID for like mask mandates, vaccine mandates, yada, yada, yada. But his shtick is to be very over the top, bombastic, kind of, get a rise out of people. In that case, city council. In this case, a sitting U.S. representative.
They call him Mr. Bombastic.
And Stein and Crenshaw have a history of run-ins. They've run in this case, the video, which will be linked on the show notes page and in the notes under the videos, if you're watching this on Rumble, Odyssey, or YouTube, is, as you'll see, he was approaching Crenshaw on the walk from Crenshaw's office to the Capitol to go vote. And we're going to get into what Stein was saying to him at that time, but they have also met at other like Republican conventions and stuff like that. And Stein basically does the same thing. He's got his phone out, he's recording himself and Crenshaw, and he's basically calling Crenshaw out for being Crenshaw. He's calling him out on his record of the things he supports and the things he votes for as a sitting representative, because last time I checked, and as we talked about on episode 111, one of the fundamental tenets of Western democracy, right, this thing that's supposed to be sacred and that we're all supposed to love, is the right to redress your grievances with your government. Well, there's no more direct way to do that than to approach a representative who you disagree with their voting record in Congress and say, I don't agree with the way that you are representing me.
Oh, Reginald, I disagree.
Alex Stein heckles him roundly. And so on this particular video, Stein is, as he has before to Patches McCain, called him a globalist, saying that he puts basic, American, Team America, world police, military industrial complex interests.
How dare you?
Over that of the American people.
America! I'm not doing it. I'm doing that.
Okay.
The Gap! NFL! Slavery! baseball. The extended version. If you haven't heard America Fuck Yeah, the extended version, please, just for you and your loved one's sake, go listen to it. You'll be a happier person for it.
Yeah.
It's a little fucked up, but you knew that already.
So the key takeaway from what Stein does to Crenshaw, and again, he's done the same thing to like Ocasio-Cortez and other politicians. And what his basic MO is, which we agree with completely, well, I agree with completely, I'll let David speak for himself, is he attacks the right from the right and attacks the left from the left. So let's just use war as a pedagogical device, right? Leftist politicians will say, the Democrats are the party of anti-war and peace and love and, love all throughout the world, right? But then they will go along and vote for, like we talked about with the Patriot Act, there was only like 1 or 2 dissenters from that. So an awful lot of Democrats voting for the Patriot Act or voting for the war in Iraq or voting for, the continuing of funding Saudi Arabia to commit genocide on Yemenis, to sustain a 20-year war in Afghanistan, and the list goes on. And so attacking the left from the left on that would to be attack them with their anti-war professed policies. And when their rhetoric. When you say, well, I thought you said you were anti-war. Why did you vote for this? Why did you vote for this defense funding bill? Why are you getting kickbacks from this, military industrial complex company, et cetera, et cetera. And so attacking the right from the right on the topic of war would be a Dan Crenshaw who will say, he wouldn't say that he's America first because that's too Trumpian. He doesn't want to, align himself there. But he will say, like, I put the American people first, right? Dan Crenshaw makes a big deal out of the southern border, qualifies it as an invasion. And because he wants to tell you that.
So he's not a Martha's Vineyarder?
No.
Okay.
That as a Republican politician, he cares for the American people first, right? But yet he votes to send billions of dollars to Ukraine, much like McCain. And the reason why he's called Patches McCain, he's never seen a war he didn't like. He wants to do everything the military-industrial complex wants to do. He can't throw enough money at Northrop Grumman or Lockheed Martin fast enough.
Can I soften that ball?
That's his voting record. And so attacking him on that record as putting those interests in front of the American people or the citizens of Texas is attacking the right from the right. And for that, I will applaud Alex Stein.
And to put Dane's vitriol into context, it's the hubris. Nice. I'm trying to make the Patches McCain thing a little softer in their eyes.
Well, I'm not the only one who calls him.
I know that, but this might be the first time they're ever hearing it, so I want to soften the blow for them.
Fair enough.
So what we mean by Patches McCain is that, like, if you truly did suffer the rigors of war, which it seems Dan Crenshaw suffered a little bit more than old McCain did, missing an eye, and it's very prevalent. But and thank you for your service and what you did in that line. That's the posthumous note that I'll take, that I have the right to. But what we're saying is, if you have seen the rigors and the trials and the horrors of war, if there's one thing that you can do when you get back stateside, is make sure to the nth degree that no one ever has to suffer that for an undue cause ever again. That's what we mean when we say Patches McCain, when we disparage former veterans that are now representatives that are sending more kids back to war to get blown up, to get dehumanized, to get sent into hell, pretty much. You would think that somebody that had been sent to hell would not be so quickly writing a statement to send more people to hell. That's all we're saying. That's literally all we're saying when we say, or when he says his line.
Patches McCain.
There we go. Thank you.
And even more than that, let me draw a specific McCain reference and how Crenshaw has definitely taken that torch and run with it. It's not just, as David suggested, that they've allegedly seen the rigors of war and that they're sending more to go do that and how terrible that is. But what's even more, to quote the great philosopher of our time, Hannah Cox, what the more that is
nice,
that is just gross about it is they hide behind, they use their military service as both a sword and a shield to do exactly that and go send off more people to die for useless things. And here's how they do it. Just like McCain and just Crenshaw uses his military service as a sword to say, I know about what the military needs. I served. So when I say we need to send billions to Ukraine, I know. Don't argue with me. I'm the one who knows everything there is to know. Crenshaw is all over Twitter all the time. Every time a vote like that comes up and a Thomas Massey or a Rand Paul, Republicans who actually stand on those sort of America First principles of maybe we shouldn't be spending all this money in Ukraine when we have people starving in America, that kind of thing. Crenshaw will denigrate them and basically sometimes not so mildly suggest that, well, they're just anti-American and they don't know what they're talking about. They weren't in the military. Screw them, this, that, whatever. That's how he uses his military service as a sword. How he uses it as a shield is exactly what he did in this video. And you'll be able to, we're going to link to the tweet and you'll be able to watch it for yourself. As Alex Stein is heckling him, to Crenshaw's great fortune, there are some men there in Wounded Warrior Project shirts. So presumably veterans working for the
probably
Wounded Warrior
sending out
Project.
more letters to me to send more money to them. But if only they would have held on to half of the letters, they would have made my fucking donation to them last a hell of a lot longer.
And what does Crenshaw, this brave Navy SEAL, take all comers kind of guy, do? He cowers behind these other veterans like a little pussy. And he says, hey, Alex Stein, how about you tell these veterans, because Alex Stein says in the video, I'm anti-war. There were no weapons of mass destruction. That war was a lie. Your sacrifice, you were used essentially as pawns for the government. All of these things are unbelievably verifiably true that Alex Stein is saying. And Crenshaw, rather than standing as a man to man with Stein and refuting his points on that, tries to hide behind these other veterans and said, oh yeah, say this to them, say that to them. He hides behind other veterans as a shield to then go on Capitol Hill and vote to send more young men to die in senseless wars for nothing so that the military-industrial complex can make more money and he can stay in office.
But
that is the epitome of a coward.
We assuage your viewpoint anymore. Dane, let's play the clip for him and let them decide.
It's a 3-minute clip. I don't have the whole thing, and I didn't mark it at the point of.
Why are you yelling at me?
I'm just telling you, I don't.
You're not playing it.
No, it's on the show notes, and it's going to be in the notes.
That would have been nice and pre-roll to figure out before I try to fucking set you up. Well, Jesus God, I guess I ran a post route when you wanted me to run a flag. Anyway.
Listen, you're going to have to see it and hear it and in the full context to see exactly what Crenshaw did.
Again, it's not. It doesn't. He seems, again, not to just disparage any of his service. I know somebody over here might wish to do that. He is now behaving more like a politician than a former veteran, or a veteran, not a former veteran, just veteran. Which is what, again, to backtrack to Patches McCain, when McCain was in office, he voted against Veterans Affairs and nearly, what was it? It wasn't 100%, but it was a high total, like above 90%. 90% against most veterans' accommodations after they come home. He voted against them 9 times out of 10 at least. And then he, like Dane was saying, he never saw a war that he didn't like. So the whole point being is that when you keep buying into the narrative of these guys are war heroes, they're decorated veterans, you need to listen to them because they have your best interest in mind. That's the wrapping paper. They're still humans. They're still flawed. They still have ambitions. They're still able to be manipulated. And they're still able to be persuaded into doing things, whether it be through virulent or through auspicious tracks, or whether they think they're doing the right thing that's neither here nor there. They're still sending more of our kids to wars that we don't need to be in. They're still sending more of our finances overseas that we could use infinitesimally more over here, or infinitely more over here than we can sending it over there. And before Dane jumps back in, we still don't know how many weapons, how much money, how many supplies we're sending over to Ukraine, which is a war that most of your fucking friends have forgotten that is even happening right now. So we are losing billions upon trillions. They said, just a statistic I heard off the top of my head today, statistic, not, but we have spent more there than we ever did in the Afghanistan and Iraq war. And we're not tracking it and we're not reporting it. So what the fuck is going on?
Well, and here's why I just want to, for the last time, object to the characterization that I am either denigrating or dismissing his service in general. Two things.
Did I do that?
Well, just like
I just don't.
Just like suggesting. And I'm not taking offense to it. I just want to make my point clear because I can understand that a reasonable minds can differ and see that what I had to say about Crenshaw as an individual can be seen as that. So I just want to
misconstrued.
I just want to make this clear. So what he did as a soldier is what he did as a soldier. We can quibble about whether it's quote unquote service, because then that begs the question, in service of who? In service of the American people? Fuck no. It didn't make us any safer. It didn't enrich us in any way, shape, or form. It enriched the military-industrial complex. So, I mean, again, if we say that that's service, it's in service of somebody, but it's not in service of us. But let's set that aside for a second.
Intention is key there.
Let's say service is service is service, whatever. And remember, we come from a military family. So I would say the exact same thing to my grandfather. If McCain hadn't lied and made sure that he never came home, I would say that to my active duty brother in the Air Force right now. I would say it to my cousins who are in the Navy and the Army. I would say that to any family member. Exactly what I'm saying right now is that who the service is to is a big difference. But let's set that aside for a second. And let's just assume that he went for noble purposes and that he was bamboozled and, his service should still be respected for that reason alone. To then come home and use said service as, again, as I said, your sword and shield, to advocate for the very things that you did that were destructive to not only the American taxpayers, to the people in country of wherever you happen to serve at, to global peace and stability, to use that service. And again, it's not a secret why the people that stood behind McCain are the same people that are standing behind Crenshaw now and pushing him to the forefront to be their mouthpiece for them, because it's a convenient thing. When somebody like a Rand Paul or a Thomas Massie wants to attack them on a vote to send billions to Ukraine, it's a very convenient thing for that person to be able to stand there and say, how dare you disagree with me? I'm a veteran. You didn't serve like I served, subtly implying that Rand Paul or Thomas Massie are not, quote unquote, respecting Crenshaw's service or respecting his
moral platitude,
his authority on the topic. So for somebody, and again, here I'll use an example. I'll use an analogy that I know you'll love. How about a Catholic priest that uses their position as shepherd of the flock to touch little boys? It is an abuse of their position to I
don't like that you just said that. I'm going to love that. I don't love it any more than anyone else does. I get it.
Because you hate the church for those reasons and stuff like that.
Jesus. Yeah, just
I'm gonna let David defend himself in a second.
I don't hate anything. I try not to hate anything.
But anyway, it's the grossness. Fuck. It's the grossness.
I'm trying to help you out on this end. You're fucking burying me on the other end.
Well, I'm not suggesting that you are in support of those priests. You said I
hated the Catholic Church. Jesus, I don't
those priests,
hate the Catholic Church. No, fuck them. They should burn in hell for all eternity.
So that's what I'm saying. It's using a position to
take
somehow
advantage of it.
Give yourself some sort of moral authority to then use that authority to advance very bad, destructive, harmful, potentially evil things. That's what's disgusting about it. So even if we gave him the utmost respect for his service, and the same thing for McCain, even if we set all of the issues about that aside and just said, what have you done with that authority that serving gave you? What have you done with it?
You know what's fucked up?
You've advanced the war machine. Congratulations, burn in hell.
You know what's fucked up? Is that analogy actually played out pretty well. Because
sometimes I stumble into good ones.
Because hurt people, as we say on this podcast all the time, and a ton of smarter people have said it before us, hurt people hurt people. And that goes the same for the Catholic Church with the abuse rate, with the child molestation, that 80% of people that were molested as a child go on to molest other children. It seems as though once people get power, when they've gone to war, they're more than willing to send more people to war. And I don't know what the mechanics of it is psychologically. It has to be something that, like, well, I made it out, so they have to go do it. Or maybe it's, I had to go do it, so they have to go do it too. Why should they be better than me? I don't know what the mechanics are. But if you were an empathetic person and you were truly fighting for the betterment of this country, you would not send more of our best and our brightest to go over, or let's call it what it is, the lower third of our population monetarily. You would not send their children over to fight a war they should not be fighting, to get blown up, to get dehumanized, to get pieces of them removed from them for all eternity. Like an eye. You lost an eye and you're more than willing to send more people to fucking war. That's, if your standpoint as a Navy SEAL that's been injured in combat, that will never be the same again, if you ever look at a war or you ever look at combat other than this is a threat to our civilization or our well-being or all of our lives as a planet, if you are willing to send people in there for anything less than that, you're not giving it the credence that it deserves at all. And you're not to be respected anymore. Thank you for your service. Awesome that you were a Navy SEAL. Kudos. Other than that, all your decisions now, they've kind of, you're disparaging your own memory is pretty much what I'm trying to say. It's like you are now, your future self is defaming your past self and what you did and what you're representing. So to anybody who's listening to this, that's in the armed forces, that's thinking about running for Congress or Senate or whatever, keep this in mind. When you get out, make sure that you are absolutely certain that it is a noble and just deed to send more of our best and our brightest to die. Other than that, you'll get disparaged like you did, like McCain did, and like Crenshaw is doing now. Period.
Well, I mean, the other thing is a complete lack of self-awareness, because at one point in the video, he accuses Stein, or doesn't accuse him, he just basically says about him. He's like, you're like the modern day version of those people that, spit on the Vietnam soldiers when they came home from war. And not only is that not the case, right? Because that's not what Stein is doing. And we don't have to say that because what Stein did is good to do this to Crenshaw, because there's a bit of a power balance when he's doing it to a sitting representative who has control of votes to send people to war and milk the taxpayers to enrich his military industrial complex buddy, and just spitting on an average everyday run-of-the-mill soldier who, and in that case, in the Vietnam War, many of those were draftees. So those guys didn't even go willingly. So yeah, the people that spit on the Vietnam War vets are scummy people. But to say that Stein is synonymous with those people is, first of all, patently absurd, but it's a complete lack of self-awareness, because even if Stein were in the same category as the people that spit on Vietnam vets. We're talking about spitting on somebody versus you, Patches, who actively sends people to go die. And if they don't die, sometimes they get left in country and abandoned, cite our grandfather. And if they're lucky enough to come home, not physically maimed, but
Infinitely
mentally
different.
with PTSD, then the government that you wanted to send them to go die for just abandons them. So, when you try to play this moral game about Stein's the bad guy and he's the modern day, Vietnam War vet spitter and all this kind of stuff, and you don't take a second to look in the mirror about you, take the beam out of your own eye before you pick the splinter out of your brother's kind of thing. The lack of self-awareness is pretty disgusting. But to wrap it up in the way we started this segment is kind of, I don't know, commending Stein on the tactic of attacking the left from the left and the right from the right. And the reason why this is a good tactic is because you'll often find that their professed principles are just empty platitudes.
Or counter.
And all of their flowery rhetoric is nothing more than thinly veiled demands for power. And that's exactly what Crenshaw is doing. But attack him from the right, and he can't get away from it because it's his own words against him.
Like you said, Dane, it's counter-indicative of what their actions truly are. And with all that being said, with all these happy feelings that are floating through our hearts right now, to spread this happiness to more and more people, where can these illustrious people direct more people? Because I already know you've already smashed that like button and you've already told all of your friends, but how can you get the word out more? Where can you send pure strangers to find this episode?
You can find this episode at wndpodcast.com/112. Show notes page is there. The links, the Stein video is there. You can also get that on any of the video platforms, Rumble, YouTube, and Odyssey. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. Look for episode 112. If you're an audio-only listener, you can get the podcast on any podcast app. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, we're there. And then they can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can tell me why I'm such a terrible scumbag for saying such nasty things about Dan Crenshaw. Or they can tell me why I'm not libertarian because I don't agree with Hannah Cox. Or they can tell David why his hair is beautiful and his muscles are huge. And anything in between.
They're pretty big. They're not that big, but they're okay.
You can do that on all of those platforms. Again, as David said, you dutiful listeners, viewers have already liked, subscribed, shared, and whatever. But please also get the word out to your friends and family and tell them to do the same. We truly thank you for your service in helping us to grow this platform so that when we talk shit on Dan Crenshaw, more and more people see it and hear it.
Is that it?
I caught David mid-drink. He's ready now, though.
Okay, so you're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
You're done?
I'm done.
Give me that.
We're all done here.
Give me that pulpit. Give me that fucking thing.
See the sound of this?
Relinquish your soapbox.
It's me stepping off my soapbox.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, as I say every week, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.